Thank you. Thank you for inviting me today to this forum. I really like what the Pullman Young Professionals is about. Networking is so important in business and in any career that you're in, and the fact that you are organizing early and making those connections and also seeking mentorship, I think is very important and a good thing. I'm a 26-year resident of Pullman. I have worked in small business. I've worked downtown. I currently work for a State Farm agent he is a small business. He works for State Farm and we work for him. So I'm familiar with the workings of small business in our community. We came here 26 years ago for a one-year visiting professorship for my husband, and well, that was a one-year visiting professorship 26 years ago. So clearly we enjoy this area. We raised two children here. Two sons I have are 26 and 21. They've gone through the Pullman School District. And my husband is still working on campus. He's a vice provost now. So we don't have any plans to leave. We really enjoy this area. I started thinking about serving on the city council 4 years ago because of my involvement in the community, starting with PTA back at Jefferson Elementary, and actually before that even with Head Start. And that just gave me the bug to serve and to just become more involved. So as our children grew up and my mothering duties changed, I had more time to devote to outside in our community, and I wanted to serve in that capacity. So I've enjoyed serving on the city council a lot. I've learned a lot, and my favorite part of the job is communicating with our city residents about helping them solve problems, networking. I have a person who has a problem, I go to the city and figure out who can help with that problem, and then I connect those two, and then they work it out from there, because I am not the professional, I am not an engineer, I am not a finance guru. So when people have questions, I don't feel like I have the answer, but I do know where to go get the answer and to get them connected. So I'm excited about all of the development and growth that is happening in Pullman, and with that come some very specific issues that we are now currently working through. And again, the public feedback is so important. So thank you very much.
My name is Chris Johnson. I'm pleased to let you know that I just celebrated my 27th wedding anniversary a couple of weeks ago. I'm fortunate to be supported by a wife that's a hard worker and has helped me raise four daughters. She says, don't feel sorry for me because they all love me and worship me. I don't know if it's completely true, but to offset that, we have 3 male cats. That's supposed to equal everything out in our household. It doesn't really work that way, but we'll go with that. We moved here a number of years ago to work for Washington State University. I work in the College of Agriculture, Human and Natural Resource Sciences. I'm the CFO for that college. It's been a great opportunity for us. We've really enjoyed this community. The way that we've made decisions about where to move and where to live is, as we've looked for or evaluated different opportunities, basically, I look for things that I think are going to match my career. My wife's fortunate. We're fortunate that she's semi-retired from a previous career, and so I look for options and I give them to her, and then she basically vets them for me, and she determines where all the sex offenders are, and she determines where the best schools are and where the businesses, and she basically says, this is a community where we think we could raise our family, and that was how we made the decision to move here. Previously, after I had graduated with an undergraduate degree and then finished a master's, just before that I had operated and ran a small business, and after that went to work for the Washington State Auditor's Office. I worked for the Washington State Auditor's Office for almost 9 years. I left the auditor's office as a regional audit manager and went to work for the Port of Anacortes as a CFO, and then later as the deputy executive director. There I was fortunate to have the experience of overseeing and being the senior project manager on then the largest cleanup site in the state of Washington under the Model Toxics Control Act. And Governor Gregoire's then cleanups in the waterfront. And so that was a great opportunity to learn some things about how that works and participate in that. spent a short time as the interim CFO at the city of Linwood, and then came here. As I was thinking about opportunities and why I wanted to do this, I haven't necessarily had some of the same experiences, and as I've talked to folks, was concerned about the community and the infrastructure and some of those things, and I look forward to talking more about that. Thank you.
I'm Eileen Macoll, and I have been on the City Council. And let me explain my term on the City Council. There's been a lot of confusion about this. I am completing a 1 4-year term. I was originally elected a year previous to that to fill a vacancy. So I've served about 1 year filling that vacancy and then a full 4-year term, which is now concluding. So there's been a little confusion about that. So I came here as a freshman in the fall of 1973, and I have been here ever since. I fell in love with it. I immediately knew that this was home and that I could get out of the quality of life of what I wanted was going to be right here in Pullman. Went to school, got a degree in communications, and I'm very proud of that. It's always interesting to me to see how Merle graduates spread themselves around the world and do a fantastic job of keeping the world informed of what's really going on out there. And we have that legacy that we share. So I have a whole lot of other things I'd like to say in the background, but I really want to make the point that after last night's city council meeting, my frustration level was just about as high as it could be. And I hope some of that comes out in some of the questions this evening. Because we have been trying to improve quality of neighborhoods, and we just haven't been able to find the tools that we need to improve the quality of the neighborhoods. I spent most of the morning scrubbing out horse troughs and stock tanks because it's going to be easier to do that until they're half frozen, right? So that was my morning that kind of got me grounded, and then I spent all the rest of the afternoon talking with people who were really pretty angry. And a lot of listening, a lot of talking. I'm right on the verge of losing my voice. But we need to be able to move things forward, to find tools, to challenge our city staff, to make things happen, to look at what's happening in other communities, and using tools that are already out there. So often we hear, oh, we can't do that, and then a topic drops. We need to push forward, continue to push forward. This is the way that governments get things done for the people. The quality of life, everybody tells me, and I agree with because I'm here, about the quality of life in Pullman. We have some challenges. We have some problems to solve. We need to find ways to solve those problems and not just continue to nod and smile and pretend they are not there. In my official duties, I'm on the, what do they call it, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Again, that's a quality of life thing about recycling. And I also serve on PBAC, which is the Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee. We've got some really exciting things coming up in terms of our long-term water supply, and we're doing a rollout from PBAC here very shortly. So that's another quality of life thing and how we are going to continue to live and enjoy here in Pullman.
So I'm Francis Benjamin, and I'm running for the at-large position for City Council. I have lived in the Quad Cities all but about 2 years of my life. I was born in Clarkston, grew up in Lewiston, moved away for a couple years because my dad worked for Potlatch, came back for University of Idaho, met my wife, and we moved to Pullman. And as we looked at Pullman, we said this is really where we wanted to make our home. It's because of the people, and Pullman really has been a great place to raise our children. We have 3 adult children that we're very proud of. Our oldest is in the military. He's a Marine, just got back from overseas with our only granddaughter, so it's good to have her stateside now. Our youngest is a second-year medical school student, and then our middle child, he actually works with disabled people. And so we're really excited about being here in our community. And if you know anything about me, I'm very passionate about Pullman. I'm very engaged and involved with Pullman. I've previously been on City Council for 12 years. But it's really connecting the community and working with the people is what gets me engaged, and really I'm focused on how do we build the community together. As a long-term City Council resident, I'm engaged in a myriad of areas within the community. I've mentored over 100 high school students in the last decade. At the same time, I've also mentored and taught over 100 entrepreneurs that were wanting to start businesses. So I'm engaged in that way. Plus, I'm also on the Pullman, the board of the Pullman Chamber. I'm over the Lentil Festival Chili Bowl. Have a great time serving chili. I'm past president of Kiwanis, and then also on the board for the Council of Aging. So I really have a wide spectrum of people that I touch within the community. And most importantly for me, I've also recently been the co-chair for Pullman 2040, which really was a community grassroots effort in order to vision for our community of what we want our community to look like and actually be purposeful in working that way. And so I've spent a lot of time in how do we bring together various groups in order to deal with some of the issues, whether we're talking about food security, whether we're talking about housing affordability, whether we're looking at just solutions in that way. And so it's something that for me, I am a very collaborative in the work that I do. I work to bring people together. I look to elevate, in other words, find the solution that's going to be the best solution for the community and one that we get to in a civil manner. And then I also I look to innovation. How can we innovate in the process?
I spoke a little bit about this previously. I think that my experience in the finance area, but also especially with the Washington State Auditor's Office, working as an auditor is interesting because you get to see the back end or the insides of organizations. And I've audited everything from institutions. In fact, I was the higher education coordinator for the Washington State Auditor's Office for a number of years, to the smallest cemetery or dike district. It includes school districts. It includes ports and public facilities districts. It also includes counties and cities. And so I have a clear understanding of the order of how we should be prioritizing and make decisions, including first, the U.S. Constitution, second, the Washington State Constitution, third, the Revised Code of Washington, or what some people call, or you'll hear the acronym RCWs. Next, the Washington Administrative Code, or WACs, which generally apply to state agencies. But then after that, the city policies, guidelines, and rules. But most importantly, and perhaps that experience, is understanding clear governance and how governance process works and how the council can make changes to their governance process and take back control of their individual city council agenda.
I originally got involved in city business. I was with ASWSU for a while in various positions, and that kind of gets you into the process. But as a property owner and a small investor in property, I'm an old hippie, and my husband and I, we really don't have anything except our rental properties. I mean, that's how we have chosen to make our way in the world. And when there were some zoning issues that came up on College Hill, and certain miscommunications were happening, and Planning Commission was making some curious choices, the small landlords got together and we formed an organization, the Whitman County Landlord Tenant Association, of which I was president for 3 years, I think. And we really learned how city process can work well and how it also can fail, and how citizens can be involved. It is so important when citizens show up. That's where I really learned to listen to what other people have to say, the members of the Whitman County Landlord Tenant Association as individual landlords and investors, and really listen and how to make those things move forward through our city process.
If I look at the experience that I bring, I would put it in 3 different categories. The first one is connectivity to the community. I understand from the 2040 process and the community engagement that's gone on, what the community has expressed that they want to see changed in the community, what they want preserved, what they want changed, and then work to move that direction. So I understand a wide range of the issues that they're interested in. The second one is because I previously served on city council. I have 12 years experience. I understand what it means to be a council member, what it takes, what the responsibilities are. And then the third piece is that I'm actually past president of the Association of Washington Cities, where I represented all 281 cities for the state of Washington. And in that role, I was able to see and compare Pullman compared to other communities and be able to see what communities are not doing right that we want to make sure Pullman doesn't move toward, but also see where there is success, other communities that we can bring back. And I would say in part of this process, I've also built a number of alliances with other community members, and I do have, even the endorsement of the current president of the Association of Washington Cities for my race.
The primary experience that I bring and knowledge to this position is just my involvement in the community over the years. Like I said, I've been a volunteer in many capacities. I've also been a chair of boards from parent councils with Head Start to other organizations here in town. I'm involved in the United Way, Distinguished Young Women of Pullman. That's my strongest, I feel, experience is just the scope of how many people I know in this community and the different needs that they express and the way that I'm able to find help for them. Throughout my life, I've been part of political activity from when I was a child. My parents ran for and held political office in the towns that we lived in. I grew up in Flint, Michigan, so I have quite a background in politics that way as well. I just feel that, and in my, now having been a council member for almost 4 years, I really have picked up a lot of experience there and learned a lot of things, and just feel strongly that I want to continue that work and become better at what I'm doing and help with all the changes that are happening in Pullman.
The role of the city is to make it clear as to what regulations are. We've been talking about, getting a business portal going. It's still not quite there, is my understanding. But making clear what the requirements are, what you need to start whatever type of business that it is. Making that information easy to access, what types of licenses you might need, what types of permits you might need, and making that like a one-stop shop, a checklist, so people can know what they're getting into, what other resources are there, like such as this group, to find their way forward in opening a business, helping them find space, helping them get those connections. Maybe someone has a space that's large that they could divide in half and make a more affordable space. The city can provide those kind of tools to that small entrepreneur, because a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm for a small startup business gets drained away by that initial uphill. It's like, I've had too much coffee today, so I'm waxing classical. It's like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill. It just seems like you have a mountain of paper on your desk and a snowstorm of confusion as to where to go, and the city can really help that process.
As I think about the role of the city as it relates to economic development, I think the first thing the city needs to do is work to make the community a community that is inviting the people want to come to. So people that want to come to work, people that want to come to live here, people that want to come to shop here, people want to come visit here. So the first thing is how can we improve and make the community more inviting in that process. As it relates to economic development, we then need to look at what are the barriers that are actually making it a challenge for businesses to work and work to remove those barriers. Eileen talked about the business portal. The business portal is completed on the chamber side. It's actually up and running, but the city has to finish their website in order to finish the connection piece in for the city side as it relates to the portal. But we need to, as a community, work to make Pullman more competitive. Right now, businesses, if they look at, do I do a business in Pullman or I do a business somewhere else, we need to make it such that they say, I want to work in Pullman. And to move that way, how do we remove those barriers?
I think a city's duty, I can't remember the word, I'm sorry, in economic development part is to promote and foster and recruit business primarily, first and foremost, to our city. For example, we just are hiring an economic development position an economic development position. So we're actually have made room in our city staff to have someone in the city who will recruit and focus on that. I also think that the city needs to really collaborate with the existing entities that are working in our city right now, like 2040, the Town Gown Collaborative, and the Downtown Pullman Association. I think that we can all work together instead of working in parallel with each other. We can actually collaborate and coordinate our efforts. We can learn from those groups, and they can learn about our processes as well.
I think the city has a responsibility to first and foremost maintain the infrastructure that they currently have to the extent that they can and manage the resources, specifically the taxes that have already been provided. There's a saying with development and cities, and it's you get the first 100 feet right, and then everything else will kind of work itself out. And that means that you get the infrastructure right. So not only maintaining your current infrastructure, but make sure that you have community development standards so that when folks come in, it's a community that they want to be in that's already been described, but that it's also maintained. I think what's really important, or perhaps what's missing sometimes, is that what we don't understand is that government wants to get involved, and really sometimes government can help facilitate, but then it needs to get out of the way, because businesses do best when they have less red tape and less bureaucracy. But if you don't have clear standards to know what that looks like or what it should be, it makes it very, very difficult. And so government ends up in the situation where they're effectively, by decisions they make, picking winners and losers, and I don't think that's how it should work.
If I look at top priorities as it relates to infrastructure, I think there's a number of things that we're currently working on that we need to make sure that we continue to move forward on. The first one is airport. We have the runway done. We need to get the terminal finished and move that forward. The second one I would say is the South Bypass. That's something where, because we have two state highways that bisect our town, there is a lot of traffic congestion based on those two highways, and a South Bypass would be able to move that congestion off in order for us to be able to take the downtown and turn it into something that we really like and enjoy. The other piece is we need to continue to look on the whole concept of the multimodal transportation. How do we move people off of just traveling in a single car to where they're walking, they're biking, they're using the bus route, and how do we improve that? And part of that piece is within the wayfinding. The 2040 has a wayfinding committee that's looking at how do we improve wayfinding to help people not be confused about getting around town, but actually be able to find the things in town, whether it's a business, whether it's the trailheads, whatever. We don't do a good job right now and we need to change our wayfinding to improve that.
Two of mine were also the airport. I believe that we need to continue seeing through that project when the next phase is the terminal. The reason this is important is because it facilitates more business in Pullman, allows our residents and business people more ease of travel, but also encourages business activities to occur here in Pullman and makes it easier for people to get here. It also will promote tourism. The South Bypass, definitely. We need to get the commercial traffic out of downtown, and so that points also to traffic flow. That's a big area here of concern because we all experience it, and I think that if we can move the commercial traffic out of the core downtown, that would be very, very helpful. And my third one, I just went completely blank on. So those are the two I have right now. Thank you.
Before I tell you what my priorities are, I'm going to tell you what my priority is not, and it's not a new city hall that was bonded for $10.5 million and then having cost overruns of $3 million. I didn't think that was a good use of resources because I think there's areas that we haven't addressed. We have multiple flooding events that we have not addressed. We just approved a CIP last night at the Pullman City Council, which I attended, where we approved a generator for City Hall, yet we don't have a generator at the fire hall. I agree to a certain extent with the airport, but I think maybe it's prioritized in a different way because when you're making decisions about airport and those types of things, you have to take security and safety in consideration first and foremost. And we have areas where needs that we probably haven't addressed there with both police and fire. So if you look at the infrastructure and the infrastructure maintenance around town, you look at some of the streets, you look at some of the sidewalks, and I believe this is also true for downtown, that we need to do a better job for our residents and those folks that are actually taxpayers in the community before we decide on new additional future developments and ribbon cuttings.
Well, we do have a generator at the Fire Station 1. It's just not a big enough generator. And that generator was line itemed out of CIP for the last few years. If it had been on CIP this year, I would have pushed for it. My concerns about the downtown and my priorities for development is going to be to see what comes out of the $127,000. I'm fiscally, conservative as well. Out of the BDS survey, we're paying this consultant a lot of money, and I have a lot of faith in them that they're going to do a great job for us. And then the ball is in our court. The ball is in the city to find the means, to find the priorities within that BDS plan. We've seen the work that they've done in other communities. They are fantastic. My job, one, is going to be to see that that does not get stalled, that we phase that project. I love your expression, if you get the first 100 feet right. If we get the first 100 feet right on this downtown master plan, that's the future of our community, and I will push hard to make sure it happens.
I will continue to support things like our welcome resolution, our inclusivity, and just being, and like the welcome wayside with all of the languages. I think they seem like small things, but they're actually quite large. I will also continue my work in the community with the United Way and organizations like that to facilitate giving in our community. As a city council member, I will just collaborate with our other council members and with the city to make sure that all residents are being heard and that we are serving them the best way that we can.
Well, this is tough because I never anticipated being in a situation like this, but one of the things that I think is really important is to do your part and to do quiet service and to be a good neighbor. So for over 30 years, I've been involved in the Boy Scouts of America. I do a lot of other service, but I do it quietly. I serve on a self-reliance committee that serves local folks, that helps them get better jobs. It improves their lives. It helps them study how to be educated and get additional education or manage their finances. I think it's very important, most of all, to be a good neighbor. And I guess what that mean by that is when you have a neighbor and you have the four corners around your house, what do you do to help others? And so for us, what that looks like in our neighborhood is that we have helped multiple neighbors remove snow or mow lawns or do other things. And I think that's how you really develop an inviting community where people want to live.
You've probably heard me mention this before. My emphasis is a lot on multi-generational. One of the things that came out of the 2040 survey that we did, something like 1,200 responses, Francis can give us the numbers, but what we found is that how many people had been in Pullman for whatever reason, moved away, and then came back. That was one of the big aha moments of that. So keeping that welcoming atmosphere, making sure we still have the very best schools, and we do, making our downtown more attractive, more multi-generational, so those with a baby stroller and grandma with a walker, and every person of every ability can enjoy our downtown, feels welcome in our community. There are places for seniors to sit and kids to wiggle, and we keep our facilities up to snuff and make sure that our skateboard park is clean and safe and civil. And taking care of all those little things that make a community welcoming, make people feel like they can get out, move around safely in their community, better lighting in the parks, better lighting on the paths and trails. Those are the things that just really on a ground level make your community feel welcoming.
When I think about welcoming, there's a lot of projects that we were working on currently as a part of the Pullman 2040 that really, I think, speaks to the direction that Pullman is going. Pullman is a very diverse community. When we look at over 80 first languages within the school system, over 50 first languages at SCL alone, that we're very diverse in that way. But we don't do the best job of connecting into all the different cultures within the community. So one thing that I've worked and actually spearheaded is a welcoming survey that currently is out, where we're gathering data, and you can actually go online to the Pullman 2040 welcoming survey and take it. There's 5 different dimensions that we're looking at in the context of welcoming in order to get a baseline of how is Pullman doing in different areas as it relates to welcoming, and then what's the direction? Is it increasing, positive, or negative? And then from there, that will actually give us data to be able to identify what are the areas that we need to work on and move forward. Another initiative that been very active involved with is the Hill Parties. That's something to get to know your neighbors. We need to have more neighborhood connection points and more connectivity. in the process. And so we're actually looking at some other ways in which we can create that connection points, connectivity, and how do we get people when they come to our community get connected in and integrated into our community.
Well, I've kind of talked about that a little bit, but I guess what I would emphasize in a minute and 30 seconds is my top priority is accountability, transparency, and improved governance. And let me explain what that is. Transparency is the ability for the public to have information that's readily available to them. It's concerning to me when I go to the city's website and I look at some of the information that's there, what I can and can't find. I think we need to make it easier for families, the public, to have this information. It's really hard to go to a city council meeting, go to a school board meeting, go to a county board meeting, and go to all these public meetings and think you're going to have all this information. We need to do a better job of having that readily available. Accountability is holding ourselves and others accountable. That means holding developers accountable. It means holding ourselves accountable. It means city staff being held accountable for the same standards that they're expecting others to have. I would really like the city to treat the community and the public like they're the customer, rather than a different approach. And I think customer service needs to become part of the culture of where the city, what the city does and who they are.
That sort of seems to have been the topic here over the last month or so, is that the citizens don't feel like they're getting good information. The council sometimes doesn't feel like they're getting good information. And that is something that we absolutely have to step forward on. I think frustration, I think I've used the word frustration about 5 times tonight, is doesn't get us anywhere. We need to be able to move forward with information. When I think about the hospital bond, when I think about the upcoming Lincoln Middle School bond, we want citizens to make thoughtful decisions when they go to the polls, not angry decisions. And if there's just confusion and anger out because of something that's happening on this end of town, that can affect the whole community for a generation to come if people are making angry choices rather than thoughtful choices. So that's where we need to get that information on the ground level, on the grassroots, not have to drill down 6 pages down into the city website. I know we keep getting a lot of promises about that, but it's very difficult to find information, and we need to do a better job of that, because I want citizens to make informed, cautious, thought out decisions.
So if I go to your question was how to help businesses be successful. Is that correct?
What steps will you take to make Pullman a better place to live, work, and do business?
To live, work, and do business. Okay. So I'll focus on the business side in that context. As a part of a chamber board member, the chamber really is focused on that idea of how do we make Pullman a great place to live, work, do business. We need to continue to work on developing a toolkit for businesses so that the businesses understand what the zoning laws are, what the rules are. I hear too many situations where individuals, they actually start a business and then find out they're in a location that's not zoned for what their business is. Or they've done work and not realized that in order to do the work they needed, it needed to be somebody that was licensed and that they couldn't have done the work themselves. So to help businesses understand what are the rules, what are the regulations, so the businesses don't get frustrated in the process, so we can help them to be successful. In that context, another area is actually developing a hospitality training to help our businesses be more hospitable to the people that come into Pullman. And we actually have some people that are working on developing this hospitality training so that whether it is a server, whether it is a person that is selling you something, that they have this hospitality mindset to be able to make this a great place.
I'll work to make Pullman a better place to live by continuing to work on the residential development that comes before us and to reevaluate our zoning and ordinances. A big priority is to get the comprehensive plan reviewed and updated, because a lot of that applies to those sorts of issues. As far as the other part that I didn't mention yet is that I'm part of the campus and community mental health task force that was commissioned by President Schultz at WSU, and that is a group of people in the community who are working together to coordinate mental health resources for all citizens and to inform them where the resources are and how to use them. And I feel like that's a very important part of how to make this a better place to live. And I am the liaison to the city in that task force, so I can go to the city and work on how we can be better at getting that information out there as well. And finally, just to work on making it a friendlier place to do business and working with our business owners and our building owners to try to get them to make Pullman more attractive and more inviting to business.
Well, it affects your bond rating, because if you don't make that decision up front and you have a bond rating, what happens is later the public ends up paying for it. When you go out for additional bonding, you will actually have your bond rating change and the interest rates will go up. And so it's a significant decision to make. I think that I'm not sure what the ultimate decision would have been if there would have been a public process, but I think the important thing is, in so many of these instances, is that when you go out for especially a bond and you make a decision like that and it's $10.5 million and the city didn't guess the cost. I mean, there's things we need to know about this community that it costs, and it's expensive to do business here because of our proximity to a freeway, for example. We need to know that in advance, and we need to plan for that, and we need to prepare for that. But when you have something that goes over by $3 million, you have to have a public process. When you look at the current city agenda right now, if you want to have or make a comment at a meeting, it says new business. It doesn't say open public comment period. And so we need to change the public involvement. And when you have a bond and you have a situation where it has an overrun, the city should choose by itself, because you went out to voters before, to have an open public comment period to get feedback.
It is a lot of money, and there were a lot of moving parts, and I'm not going to make any excuses for it. We have not had a cost overrun yet. We're budgeted more money, so it's not really a cost overrun yet. When we're knocking on wood and making sure that these things come in the way we have them outlined now. I don't think we were clear with the public about the fact that not everything that's needed for the new city hall was included in the bond. There was always an understanding on the inside maybe, but not necessarily on the outside, that there would be more money needed to get the thing up and running. Basically, we bought the shell and the basic stuff. There's a lot of things that will yet probably be needed into the new city hall we may not know about yet. And it really, I'm with the feeling here that it is unfortunate that people are not well informed, that they feel like they got sandbagged on this one, that they voted for it twice, and then it come around like this, and now it left a very bad taste. We could have done a hell of a lot better in getting that information up front about the nature of the purchase, because that's where I think the basic failure to communicate was.
The City Hall project, I think, is something that is systemic of what is happening right now in the building industry. There's very few projects right now that are coming in at bid or under bid. Most of them, if you get an estimate that where initial person projects it, when the bid actually goes out, it's going to come in a lot higher, just because of what's happening with tariffs, what's happening with building costs, what's happening with wages. There's a series of things, and it's a very complex thing. My understanding isn't that the city is going out for additional bonding in this process, and the current council members could correct me if that's wrong. So it's not that there's additional bonds that's going to go out. What the city is doing is they realized the value is costing more than what was originally projected, and so they're trying to figure out within the city's budget, how did they still make this work. Now, the bottom line is, and if you're upset with the outcome, I'm one of the citizens that actually pushed for this to go forward, is that if you did a new building, it would have cost you $30 million. And so we are still getting an incredible deal for the building that we're getting, and we need to keep that in mind, that yes, there's some cost overruns. It shouldn't have happened, but with the current system, it is.
It's really hard to go last when everybody said what you wanted to say, or some of it anyway. I do agree that the city should have communicated more clearly the conditions of the bond and what exactly it was going to cover. I remember asking about district court when we were giving tours, and I said, well, where's the court going to be? And the person giving the tour said, well, we're not sure yet. And that should have been more of a red flag for me. But so I think that that's a prime example of how it wasn't really vetted out as to what was going to happen with the court and what resources were going to be applied toward that. I also agree that our location does make it prohibitive to, or more prohibitive than in other places to build and do business because of our proximity to larger metropolitan areas, which involves getting materials here and also labor. So building just costs more when we are here, but we should have tried to put that more into the equation. So I agree that communication is key here, and I also agree that we are going to work hard to, within the budget, to make sure that we can cover what we need and do it in a gradual process, just like we as homeowners have to do sometimes.
I would like to see, and this is just kind of a dream, I would like to see more done at the high school level to encourage people to explore who they want to be, who they want to become, in that college is not always the answer. I was really lucky to be able to come to Washington State University in 1973 because it was affordable. Things have changed a lot in terms of prices, you all well know. To explore areas where our young people that might want to be a mechanic or a heavy equipment operator or a plumber or an electrician. These are good paying jobs, and I would like to see more programs in our schools because those are the people we need in the community. We need in this growing community more technical people, more practical people, and not burden or assume that every student needs to go on to that 4-year higher education. I can't emphasize that enough. I came from a blue-collar family. My parents were lucky enough to have good jobs that they could send me to school when it was affordable. But we need to do more to encourage young people to look at a different horizon other than a 4-year college education with a $150,000 price tag.
When I think of the term young people, I'm thinking both high school, but then I'm also thinking college age and those that are just out of college. And I think the young professionals, this group getting started is an excellent example of where you're trying to do something in order to make this a place for the connection points. And I think connection points is what I would see as the most critical. We need to do a better job of getting connection points of high schoolers connected to the community, whether through service, whether through mentorship, those connection points. We need to, at the same time, identify ways in which we can connect people and get them engaged into the community. So for me, I'd say it's connection points is what's most critical.
I agree with the networking and really getting young people involved, specifically in city government. A lot of cities have a youth city councilor position, and I would like to see maybe something like that, or maybe positions on boards in the community, and that is how they're going to get engaged, young people, and how they will learn not only what about the specific activity of the board, but what is really happening in our community. There are a lot of things that are going on that young people and even all people don't know about. Homelessness, for example. A lot of people don't realize that there is a homeless issue in this city, and a lot of people are blind to it. And I think that as we introduce young people to those issues, then they will become more proactive. My work with distinguished young women, every year I'm amazed at 16 and 17-year-old young women and the way they answer questions just beautifully. I mean, they really are insightful and have a lot of good things to offer. So I would like to pull them more into the community boards and service.
I think that's different for everyone. My experience with young men, especially in working with the Boy Scouts, and I recall my experience to this day as I worked on citizenship in the community, that part of that merit badge was to go to a city council meeting. And I recall that experience, going to that city council meeting and how business was handled and how you interacted with folks. And I think with our young people, those are the types of opportunities we need to create. I think there's a lot of great organizations that do that. I actually really agree with what Eileen said. I think that one of the mistakes we've made, perhaps in the United States of America, is that we've tried to focus all these kids towards a 4-year degree, and I'm not sure a 4-year degree is what's right for some of these kids. The boys that I've worked with, a lot of them would rather be doing trades or other things, and so I think it's creating opportunities for them to have good experiences.
Well, the council, first of all, the council is designed in the context of it should be setting vision and direction, and then having the staff carrying it out. So in that context, the council needs to be continually visioning, continually looking forward, and planning for the future. Pullman has accomplished a number of things, but it's really because we've backed into it. We didn't plan it. We're purposeful about it. When we started the 2040 visioning piece, and we had conversations, we found out in the recent history there had never been a visioning in Pullman. That shouldn't have happened. And so in that context, I think the city council needs to not set its goals for what are we going to accomplish this year or in 3 years, but they really need to be looking at what's that 15-year goal out, what's that 20-year goal out.
I think the city council should listen to the constituents, first of all, to find out what the concerns and the desires are. And I think we should approve policy based on that. And then thirdly, though, and most importantly, I think we should continue to collaborate with our city officials, not butt up against them or put them under pressure. But when something is not happening the way we would like to see it happen, I think we should have sit downs with them and really talk to them about it, not as a group, but we can do it individually. And I actually do that a lot. I ask questions of the public works director and the city supervisor and the transit, for example. And I think that's really where our power lies, is to be able to talk to those people and get answers from them, and then use it in our future policy making and make sure that what we are setting is being carried out the way that our residents want it to be.
There's a concept of having what I would call, sometimes they're called fierce or courageous conversations. I think there's a perception that it's uncivil or we're not being civil when we have direct conversations about real issues. And when I look, oftentimes I don't feel like I have to attend a city council meeting because I can just watch it, and I don't feel like I'm going to make an impact because the comments I make or the opportunities I have to interact, I don't feel like I'm heard. And so I think we need to be able to, in a very respectful and civil way, be able to have conversations and address real issues from especially the public standpoint, where the public really feels like they're being heard, that they really are the customer, and that decisions aren't what, and I admit I'm not on city council and I don't have the experience of ever being on city council, but from an outsider looking in, I often feel like decisions have already been made or conversations have already been had. And so when I go to a public meeting under the RCWs, the Revised Code of Washington, I feel like those decisions have already been made and there hasn't really been a public process the way it should be. And I think we should be able to have honest, fierce, courageous conversations about those things that we think need to change.
Status quo, oh boy. I think what a council person has to do, council member has to do, is commit to the future. Not to where we've been, but to where we're going, and commit to it. Not just at a 90-minute city council meeting, but in every conversation with city officials, in every conversation with every citizen, and that is commit to the future. Because the future is going to get here one way or the other. And we need to commit. You need to get up in the morning, as I do. You need to recognize that I have a job to do, and that is commit to the future of this community. I can't state it strongly enough. We have not done that. We have to be civil, we have to play nice to some degree, but too often we nod and we smile, and that commitment is just not there, and it needs to be.
Pullman is a great place to live, work, and do business, and here's why. We have a wonderful sense of community. We have people who are passionate and committed to the betterment of this community. We integrate all of our entities, like our school district and our hospital, to make life better for everyone. It's a great place to raise a family. It's a great place to get an education, and it's a great place to be a part of, to be able to be a part of making changes in the community.
Pullman is an incredibly safe community. Pullman is an incredibly wonderful community with some of the best schools in the state of Washington. Pullman has great, wonderful economic development opportunities, but we can improve those with infrastructure. We need to be looking forward of not traditional infrastructure, but also other infrastructure like 5G technologies or fiber, other things that's going to create, exactly as Eileen was describing, that vision for the future. Pullman has wonderful educational opportunities in that we have a university here. You have a wonderful community here with lots of educated folks. The healthcare in this community, while there's some things that are lacking, is probably second to none. I'm not sure that there's very many things that are lacking here, but I think when you look at it, what we can do is we can prioritize and do better overall.
What a great question. I got a lot of things to say here, but what immediately came to my mind, my personal story, I came to Pullman and I became who I am. And Pullman is still that place. You can become who you are, whether that means going to a four-year institution, whether that means getting involved in agriculture, whether that means getting involved in city politics or becoming an activist for a cause you care deeply about. When you can come to Pullman, you can become who you are, and so can your kids, and so can your grandmother. We came up with a little phrase through the 2040, Pullman is easy. It is easy to be who you are, to live, work, love, be recognized for your individual and unique talents. We still have that scale in our town. We can make all those things happen. And I became who I am because I came to Pullman.
I do like this question. This is a great question. Pullman is a hidden gem that most people don't have on the top of their list. But if you look at all the different awards Pullman has received, Pullman is recognized as being a great place to live. It's recognized as being a top safe community. It's recognized as having incredible health care, incredible education. It's recognized in all these different ways. But the thing that you need to do is you need to come and experience Pullman. And especially for someone who is a student, stay here for the summer, because that will hook you. Pullman is one of those communities that if you spend a summer here, you're going to go from I'm here for a year to I'm here for 40 years.
Well, yes, my closing statement would be my four priorities. I think that the community and Pullman is doing a lot of things very, very well. But I think sometimes we lose sight of our priorities or what we should be doing in order of priority. And so for me, it's first accountability, transparency, and improved governance. I've talked a little bit about those things, but I would like to just touch on the governance side, because I think where we can really make a difference is changing how the city council operates and taking control and owning their agenda so that the public feels like they have a voice and they're treated truly like a customer. I think that part of that is baking into the city culture with the staff within the culture of the city, that the public and the business operators in this community need to have a voice and that they're the customer. Next, I would say public safety and security. If we're not doing that well, then we're missing the boat. Next, I would say that it's infrastructure maintenance improvement. If you can't maintain your infrastructure, you probably shouldn't be doing some other things. And I think if we drive around this community and we look at why we don't have certain businesses or other economic development, I think some of that says we communicate that indirectly by how some of our sidewalks and streets and those types of things look. The last thing I would say is that we need to have community development standards. We need to have community development standards that clearly outline and ensure that everyone coming to the community has the same opportunity. So if you're a developer or you're a business owner, you want to do something in this community, that everyone's going to be treated exactly the same and fairly, and it's not going to be up to an individual or perhaps someone who has a preference of what they would like to see to happen in that community. I think if we focus on some of those things and a lot of the other things that we would like to do, that we would like to advance, I think we'll have more opportunities for those in the future. Thank you.
There is so much more to be done. I want to continue to keep my shoulder to the wheel and push forward and continue to do what is needed to be done in this community. We've touched on things like infrastructure and moving forward from the status quo and downtown development standards. We've touched on all those great things tonight, and I agree with all of those. I want to be a part of that team. I want to be a part of that team that pushes us forward.
Pullman is right now at a great crossroads where in the last few years you've seen the community move from being a community where if you saw a problem you said, well, I just don't like this, and they'd walk away, to now they're saying, I don't like this, and this is what I'm going to do about it. This is how I'm going to be involved. So there's a much more engagement within our community, and so we're really at an opportunity at Crossroads to be able to do some incredible things in the community because the people want to move that way, and there's impetus to move direction on things. If you look at how I approach things, I have a three philosophy step process within it. First of all, collaboration. I believe that we need to work together in order to find the best solution. That just one person or relying on one person to do it, they're not going to come up with the best solutions. I believe that elevation, and that's in the context of there needs to be thoughtful, open, and civil discussion in this process in order to identify what is the solution that's going to benefit the broadest cross-section of our community and the most community members, not something that's going to be a benefit to just a single individual or a single group, but we really need to look to solutions that are going to be the benefit across the whole community. And the third one is innovation. I'm someone who's always looking to see how can we innovate, do something different, how can we bring people together in a way that we haven't done before in order to accomplish things that at this time we haven't been able to accomplish. And so within that context, that's where I would go is the collaboration, elevation, and innovation.
I would really like to continue working for Pullman on the city council and working to improve our processes. Absolutely, I agree. Working to encourage more engagement and easier engagement for our citizens in multiple ways. I would like to continue to work on our infrastructure. It is important. It's how we get around every day and how we live. And so our traffic is concerning, and our population is only continuing to grow. So we need to look at responsible growth. We need to look at responsible development. And I really am committed to making sure that moving forward, especially, that we not only revise what we have, but also think about new ways to do things that are environmentally responsible as well as appealing and appropriate for our community. Thank you.